Hello everyone. This is our first lecture for Chapter 4. In this lecture, we will focus on measures of variability, the range, the variance, and standard deviation. Here are the learning objectives for Chapter 4. This is what we're going to go over, and this is what you will need to know for the proctored exam. Think of these as learning objectives as your roadmap through the chapter and your study guide for the exam. Take a minute, hit the pause button, and read through these. Remember that there are three things we want to know about a set of data: its shape, its typical value or measures of central tendency, and its spread of scores or measures of variability. We've already looked at how to describe the shape of distributions and how to calculate and interpret measures of central tendency. The purpose of measures of central tendency is to describe the typical value of a variable. Measures of central tendency, however, can be misleading by themselves because you could have two distributions of scores with the same mean, but one of the distribution's scores might be more clustered together than the other distribution's score. So, we need measures of variability as well. It's not enough to report the mean of our data values. We also need to describe how spread out our data values are. How much variation is there within our data set? Is there lots of variation between data values, or is there very little variation? As you can see here, the distribution for height has less variability. The scores are closer together. The distribution for weight, right here, has more variability. The scores are more spread out. Variation always exists in a data set, regardless of which characteristic you're measuring, because not every individual is going to have the exact same value for every variable. Variability is what makes the field of statistics what it is. For example, the price of homes varies from house to house, from year to year, and from state to state. Household income varies from household to household, from country to country, and from year to year. Variability can be defined several ways. Variability is a quantitative measure of the difference between scores. Variability describes the degree to which the scores are spread out or clustered together. The purpose of measures of variability is to 1. Describe the distribution in terms of average distance between scores and means. 2. Measure how well an individual score represents the distribution. And 3. How much error to expect when using a sample. So let's start our discussion on measures of variability with the range. The simplest way to measure variability or spread is to look at the largest and smallest values. This gives us information about the tails of the distribution. The range is the difference between the largest and smallest data values. The largest data value is also referred to as the maximum, and the smallest data value is referred to as the minimum. So let's look at an example of 10 psychology students' exam scores. The highest test score in this data set is 94. And let me quick. This is the max. and the lowest test score is 62. So the range R is equal to X max minus X min, which is equal to 94 minus 62 equal to 32. So the difference between the best and worst score in this data set is 32 points. All the students in the class scored between 62 and 94 points on this exam. The range is affected by outliers or extreme values in the data set, so the range is not resistant to outliers. If the student with the worst score of 62 actually didn't study and scored even lower, like 28, the range becomes 94 minus 28, which is 66 points. So the difference between the best and worst score here is 66 points. Also, the range is calculated using only two values in the data set, the largest and the smallest. Researchers rarely use the range because it is a very crude way of describing variability, since it only considers two scores from the group of scores, and it does not take into account how clustered together the scores are within the distribution. The variance and the standard deviation, on the other hand, use all the data values in the calculations.